The current president still has all the executive power of any president, even though they call it a lame duck. That means you know he's handing over power in January, but he has all the powers. They're not reviewable, some of the executive powers, not even by the Supreme Court. And Biden officials are mulling what could be a comprehensive plan to stop much of Trump's DOJ and FBI revenge plot, which I just showed you. This is a plan that could legally completely thwart the vows to abuse federal law enforcement and prosecution, to Trump-proof any potential misuse of authority. And if it is done broadly, I can tell you as a lawyer and legal reporter, it could checkmate and stop future federal probes in their tracks in the next Trump term. For real. Here's how it would work. President Biden would point to this ample evidence that Trump is already expressing a desire, an intent to abuse power, to illicitly prosecute people who have not broken any law, naming political targets, demanding jail without even the pretense of naming a crime or respecting any investigation. So that would be an argument that he's already targeting democracy, free speech, and vowing what could be illegal selective prosecution. And two, President Biden could say this new threat, admitted by the president-elect, is unprecedented. And three, that the Supreme Court granted the incoming president new immunity for official acts, past and future. So President Biden could, under this plan, and I'm telling you, it is a pretty wide, sweeping, bold plan, but the idea would be President Biden could answer the Supreme Court with lawful action of his own, creating new legal terrain in response to new legal terrain. And here's how it would work. I told you, plain English. Under this plan, President Biden could grant his own immunity to people who serve the country in any branch of government, in any party, who now face this documented threat and prosecution. The argument is, facing unprecedented moves by the court and the president-elect vowing these big moves, that would require an unprecedented protection of public servants. Indeed, the Biden White House could literally quote from the Supreme Court immunity ruling about how officials need some immunity from future prosecution to do their jobs. Biden could thwart a probe of Cheney or Jack Smith or other government veterans on any MAGA enemies list, quote unquote. He could do it with this comprehensive lawful use of the pardon power, issuing new preemptive pardons to stop the kind of DOJ prosecutions I just showed you they're threatening. Remember, federal probes are predicated on investigating a federal crime. If the so-called politically made-up crimes here are already pardoned, boom, you're pulling that crime right out of the legal process. If there's no threat of conviction and jail at the end of that probe, it's been pre-pardoned, then there's not much federal action there. Now, these are uncharted waters. The incoming president knows he has the immunity that he got supersized by the Supreme Court and is vowing to abuse power. An immunity that's broader, really, than anyone's seen before, with a guy making threats that go way past Nixon. So the Biden plan to preempt the abuse of those probes and thwart these revenge cases is on the table. Biden could legally do it alone. Unlike many other things you hear about, Congress and the courts are not involved in these executive pardon clemency powers. And Biden aides are reportedly considering a version of this plan. We don't know how narrow or broad. It has been reported sometimes in narrow terms. A couple of pardons here or there, or you could hit the whole enemies list, or write something broad enough to protect, like I said, people who served in government that are facing basically the kind of attacks that the Supreme Court said they should be immune from, at least in the presidential example. And all legal roads seem to lead back to January 6th. That's because Trump and Patel and these others are on a mission to try to undo what remains the greatest democracy crisis in the last century and you can tell from the way they act, the greatest problem for Donald Trump, the worst thing he's done, according to many Republicans. We've played the quotes here. So they want to basically try to reverse that convicted sedition in mind and law. And you should note, when I say all roads lead back, this pardon reporting includes exploring pardons for basically creating a type of immunity for leaders of the Jan 6 committee who faced tremendous pressure. You see Schiff and Cheney and others, Milley, who spoke out, and that would be dealing with pardons in both parties. Now, what you're hearing in this reporting is the news. The White House is considering this, and what I just mentioned, the arguments by advocates, people for this. I can also report for you that some legal experts who are well outside of MAGA also oppose this plan to Trump-proof the DOJ that I just told you about. There are Washington observers who say it just carries the risk of implying guilt to the very people who were doing the honest, good investigative work in the government, that it could set a dangerous precedent. There are lawyers who argue this is not the right way to protect long-term DOJ independence, nor present the nation with any kind of clarity. Indeed, that's a DOJ vet, Sarah Isgur, who's been rumored among some of these lists saying, I don't want the pardon even if you offered it, because it's not the right way to do it. President Biden has weeks now to decide yes or no to a plan that's clearly being considered.